Hi, Pastor Johnson.
Yes.
This is Joel Williams calling. I'm Benjamin Williams' older brother.
Hello, sir.
Do you have a moment?
How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Do.
I don't know if you remember me or not, but I came there and visited your church on Labor Day weekend of 2019.
Yeah. Are you the state police officer down in the Carolinas?
Well, that would be me.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
And I'm actually working as we speak.
Okay.
So, do you have a couple of minutes?
I do, yes. I'm working from home today, mainly putting out fires that your brother has created.
I'm not at all surprised, and that's why I'm calling you.
Okay.
Here's the deal, preacher. Benjamin has been Benjamin since he was a little boy, and we have a very large family. I wanted to call you a year ago, and my siblings talked me out of it. And after what happened last night, when I saw what Benjamin put on Facebook, I said, I don't even care what my siblings say. I am calling Pastor Johnson. So I called my pastor this morning and said, look, I need some advice. Should I call him or should I not call him? And my pastor told me to call you. So if you didn't want me to call you, blame my preacher. So, but I too go to a Southern Baptist church. We were raised Independent Baptist. I go to Bethel Baptist in Shelby. It really doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things, but it is part of the issue a little bit. And Benjamin has had serious mental issues since he was a little boy. It was not because of his upbringing. It was not because of our parents. It was just simply that Benjamin has always been different from the rest of us in our family. There were 9 of us kids. And we have spent his entire life trying to talk him off of the cliff, so to speak, and to no avail. He has gone in and out of serious issues with alcoholism, pornography. He himself, I don't know if you're aware of this, but he himself pretty much raped a girl in Oklahoma when he was in college, an underage girl, while he was at a Christian college there. And the parents of that girl did not want to prosecute him. She was 16, he was 21. And just a lot of issues that we've dealt with him. Dad got him to go into the Marine Corps. We ended up having to get him out of the Marine Corps. It's just been one thing after another his entire life. On the church front of things, you are that I know of, his 5th church that he has been a part of since he left home. And all 5, well, you would be the 5th church now that he's gone on the attack against. And for various reasons. And he always blames the pastor and always takes the high road of, I have to take a stand for the Lord. And that stands means going out and attacking his preacher. Now he has the luxury of social media on his side, whereas before he didn't have that. So now he's become even more dangerous. And truthfully, I hate to be obviously you're already aware of it if you're putting out fires, but you were just the next in a string of pastors that are on the receiving end of Benjamin's evil behavior, for lack of a better term. Again, preacher, I wanted to call you a year ago, and my siblings would not let me. And I kind of regret that decision. But they said, let Pastor Johnson deal with him as he sees fit. And, he's a smart enough man. He can kind of see what he's up to and, let him deal with it. So I know you have tried to reach out to him. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
For some time, For some time now, there's been a change in him. My wife and I intervened in he and Catherine's life about a little over a year ago, probably a year ago, back around Thanksgiving. He had become more and more abusive to Catherine, and behaviorally was just out of control, picking fights with people at church. And so we intervened, and just lovingly, we just went to his house and we prayed with him, and I confronted him over his sin, and he was super mad at me, but agreed to get help. And I urged him strongly to get psychological treatment and to see his doctor about different things that were going on in his body. And eventually he warmed back up to us. And but since then, he's gone from one instability to another, to another, to another. And from my perspective, it looks like it all really got worse when he went on the Dr. Phil show and got a good taste of heroism. People really thought he was a hero for blowing the whistle, and he just became addicted to that crusader rush. And he has just been totally out of control since. He's been disciplined by the church. We took his keys away. We took him away. I took him out of all leadership and service positions. He has continued to lash out at people at church and then apologize later. And so I knew the other shoe was about to drop. I didn't know exactly how it was going to happen, but last night was the night. So we knew it was coming. He lives under the illusion that you are the only sibling that's on his side, that you see the folly of the rest of the family, and you think they're all crazy, and you love Ben. And so I don't know if you know that or not, but that's the way he portrays you up here.
I do know that to some extent, but he is even going after me now. And right. I've not had any contact with him. I've not spoken to him or had any contact with him since I was there that weekend in 2019. And none of our family has. We have to stay away from him because he brings up conversations from years ago and puts it out on social media. And he just recently did a podcast with this guy who's anti-IFB preacher thingamajig. Yeah. And I watched that podcast, and he went after me and my brother, who are in law enforcement, in that podcast. So I know it's coming. He's coming after us too. Sure. But what you just described in your church is verbatim what he's done in his last 5 churches. He comes into a church. He starts wooing the pastor. He has the pastor usually over to his house a number of times for dinner. And then he will start wooing people in the church. Next thing you know, he's the song leader. He's the director of security. He's the director of the sound booth. And on it goes. And then when he gets mad at something he doesn't like, then he goes on the attack. And that's his MO. That's what he does. And the reason I wanted to call you was to absolutely assure you that it has nothing to do with you or your church. It is 100% him. And I'm not even interested in the whole situation with your church. That is none of my business. With what he's bringing up from yesterday, I know it's probably a slanted. There's probably gobs more to the story that I don't even need to know. But he takes little tidbits like that, and he will go on the attack, and he will do everything he can to destroy your church, publicly and privately. He will call church members. He will try to get an organized event against you, and that's just what he does. And why the Lord allows it, we don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen or heard what he's done to our dad. But
I've heard a lot of it anyway.
Our dad is not a perfect man, but our dad loves the Lord, and he's been in ministry for 55 years. I don't agree with everything with Dad, but I love him and honor him, And you know, the stuff, Benjamin was not abused when he was growing up. It's all a make-believe world that he lives in that is completely false. And it's sad. Did we have a strict home? Yes, we had a very strict home. But the fact of the matter is that 8 out of the 9 of us turned out really good.
Yeah.
And that should say something. You know.
Yeah.
Well, one's in heaven. One of my older brothers died from cancer, but he was a manager with FedEx when he died. He ran a whole distribution hub up in Pennsylvania. Super smart guy. And you know, some of us are in ministry, some of us are, you know, in law enforcement, some of us are professional world. And Benjamin is just after another his entire life. About the only thing he has not been is in jail. And I guess that's only by the grace of God.
Right.
But and he treats his ex-wife like garbage. And she's a wonderful girl. Did she make some mistakes? Yes, she did. But Jean is a wonderful girl, and I'm actually coming up this weekend to see her and the kids. Please keep that to yourself, because Benjamin cannot know that.
Yeah. No, I absolutely will not do that.
It will explode. But I'm going to see his kids without his knowledge until after the fact, and after that I will not be in favor anymore. But I've not seen him in over a year, and you know, I'm not going to see Ian, and I'm hoping to see Mackenzie, because Mackenzie's supposed to be with her mom this weekend. But I don't know if she's going to come or not. She doesn't know I'm coming. But it's going to be a chance. You know, I'm hoping to see her.
Maybe that's something you can explain to me. How, you know, this thing with Mackenzie, I've been so troubled and so confused. Has Ben totally brainwashed Mackenzie, or is he suppressing Mackenzie? Because, you know, Mackenzie was very happy with her mother until she wasn't happy with her mother anymore. And I'm just trying to figure out how's that
It's very easy to explain. Benjamin hates Jean with a passion, and he daily berates her and calls her names and tells his children how terrible she is. And from what I understand, he recently, within the last few weeks, filed a Child Protective Services complaint against her for abuse.
That's right.
And because Jean told me that, and because of that, she doesn't know if Mackenzie's going to come. But we're all heartbroken for Mackenzie. Mackenzie is becoming like Benjamin, and it's breaking our hearts, because Mackenzie was, I have a lot of nieces. I've got 52 of them altogether, with both sides of the family. And Mackenzie had a special place in my heart. She was a little cutie pie growing up, and to see what she's becoming is absolutely heart-wrenching. And it's because of Benjamin. And he is turning her into himself. So yes, both of what you just said is true. He is brainwashing her, and he looks at he's using his children as pawns against Jean, and his ultimate goal is to turn every one of those kids against Jean. That is his goal. Instead of co-parenting and just trying to do the best he can with the situation, he's trying to destroy her by using the kids, which is not unusual in divorces. But with Benjamin, it just seems to be a little bit extra. So
kind of everything is extra.
You know, and his, you know, just flamboyancy, and you know, it's nothing new. You inherited it at your church. I don't know if you remember my statement to you when I met you. I said something along the lines of, I hope you can do something with them. and I kind of said it in jest, but I was kind of serious at the same time. Actually, I was very serious at the same time. And I had a couple serious talks with Benjamin that weekend. Of course, he didn't listen to anything I said. But I told him, we went to the zoo that weekend, to the Fort Wayne Zoo, and on the way there, he started lamb-blasting Gene in the van. And I just looked over at him as quietly as I could because I didn't want the kids to hear me. I said, Benjamin, please don't do that to your children's mother. And he said, yeah, you're right. I don't need to do that. Well, then he just continued to do it. Gene's a great mom.
These are obviously more than just like character flaws. They're psychoses, because the things that he posted in that Facebook post last night, not only are they fabrications, but they're patently false. There are conversations that happen between he and I that were factual, were of good repute, were God honoring, where he was informed about the convicted child molesters in our church. I mean, we do have some. We don't deny that. We do believe that the church is a hospital for sinners, and we have protections and mechanisms in place.
We have some too.
To safeguard our congregation. He knew about this stuff, but now he's turned it into a weapon.
Yep,
so,
like he always does. And that's why I want you to know it does not have anything to do with you, and it doesn't have anything to do with Waynedale Baptist Church. It is Benjamin's M.O., and I want you to know that his family does not support anything that he's doing, and we are heartbroken and infuriated by his behavior and what he does. And sadly, I saw it first thing this morning when I got up. Something told me. I knew when I saw his recent post, he unfriended me on Facebook, but he hasn't blocked me, so I can still see his public stuff, which most of his stuff is public. He wants it to be public, so that's helpful. So when I saw the last 3 days worth of stuff, I said to myself, and I said to my wife, I said, something's getting ready to break loose at his church. And I just screenshot it because some of my siblings don't have Facebook, so they don't see any of his stuff. I screenshotted it and I sent it to our sibling text, and I said, it's happening. I said, y'all need to pray for Pastor Johnson and Waynedale Baptist Church. That's what I said. And they've all responded to me. So you have our family support for what it's worth. It's sad, and I'm heartbroken of what you're going through and what you're going to go through, because he is going to try to destroy your church. And we're just pray that God will stop him. That is not the last post on his Facebook about Waynedale Baptist, I assure you. He will start. I wish
I could suppress it now. I wish there was a fire extinguisher I could blow on it, but that's not how it works.
Well, if I could just give you one recommendation from a layman to a pastor, and my pastor, we had a gentleman. I'm not going to call him a gentleman. We had a man that came to our church who has similar attributes to Benjamin. When I saw him, met him the first time, I remember saying to my wife, I said, he's another Benjamin. And he started going around and started stirring up things in the church, and eventually Pastor Sims had to ask him to leave. He never joined the church because our church wasn't good enough for him, but we weren't righteous enough for him. But he was still there, and he was still causing problems. And what our pastor did was, and I thought it was very wise, he had a meeting after Sunday night service with all of the men in the church. And we met in the choir room, and he just laid it out and said, we need to love this brother, but this is what he's up to. And, he didn't tell him, don't speak to this man or anything like that. But he said, I anticipate that he's going to create problems or try to in the church, and we just need to be aware of it, and so on and so forth. And that seemed to kill it, and we haven't seen him since. I would just, if I could give you any recommendation, would be to maybe meet with the men of your church and just let them know because it's coming, and you're going to see things on Facebook from him if he doesn't block you. you're going to see things where he's going to come out and he's going to start repeating conversations that you've had with him in his home, or various things, and he's going to twist it, and he's going to start to try to make your church look as bad as he possibly can. It's heartbreaking, preacher. I don't know how else to put it. But it's your fire extinguisher's not going to be just finished this morning.
Yeah.
So,
well,
all I can tell you is I'm
fortunately,
sorry.
we've got some good, solid men in our church, and that are really honorable men and supportive. Hopefully, we can get in front of this thing before too much harm is done.
I'm not surprised at it at all. Nothing you told me surprises me in the least, because it's just a pattern. What you inherited is what he's been all of his life. So the problem is Benjamin Williams. The problem is not Waynedale. And the problem is not Pastor Johnson. The problem is not Ron Williams. It's not his siblings. The problem is his heart. And unfortunately now he has amassed himself a following in this little make-believe Facebook world who are essentially the former disgruntled girls from the girls' home where we grew up. And he's banded them together with that Dr. Phil show. And they all have a common enemy, and that's my dad. And so that's emboldened him. And the more that they respond to him, the more of a power trip it gives him.
It's a drug.
He himself is he's like a cult leader. The very thing he talks about, and narcissism and everything else. Yep. He daily describes himself on Facebook.
He does. It's almost comical at times.
Yeah. I was just talking to one of my nieces, one of my other brother's daughter, yesterday, who lives in Ohio, and I told her, I said, it is just unbelievable how Benjamin daily describes himself on Facebook. And you'll notice that none of his siblings, you never see anything from us. We never respond to anything he says on there. We just ignore him. We see it, but we don't engage him at all, because that's what he wants. He wants to fight. And if your church people start to respond to him, that's exactly what he's looking for. So caution your men about that, because it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult not to lash out at him when he starts in and starts berating you and stuff. It's going to be tough for your deacons not to go after him in the social media world. But that's exactly what he's looking for.
Yeah. I wonder, Joel, and this is going to be a hard question, but to give full disclosure and be totally above board, I wonder if when I address this with other leaders in our church, would I have your consent and the consent of your siblings to say what you just told me about the way the way that Ben has always been troubled, the way that he's had these problems since he was a kid, the way that many of the things that he says about his upbringing and Hephzibah House are fabrications? Is it okay if I loosely quote you in that way?
It's totally fine to quote me.
Okay.
I would ask you leave the siblings out of it, because they inherently, most of them are still in the independent Baptist world, and by nature they don't really trust outside stuff. And my concern would be that if anybody in that, say you have a meeting with the men in your church, and one of those men were to say something to Benjamin, then Benjamin would come back out with that. You see what I'm saying? As far as, the siblings and stuff. And, even my siblings are trying to destroy me with my former church, And
is that right?
I don't care. Yeah, you can quote me. Absolutely. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But as far as the siblings, I'd ask you just kind of keep them out of it.
Sure, man. No problem. I will totally respect that. That's the reason I asked the question. I get it.
But with me, absolutely. I think your church deserves to know the truth, and I wish that I had talked to you a year ago. I don't know that it would have made any difference, but my siblings asked me not to. But I just, after last night, and while reading it this morning, I was like, man, should I have called Pastor Johnson a year ago? But we wanted to give you. We were genuinely hoping that you could reach him. We genuinely were. In an outside, a totally new environment, a new church denomination even, because the other churches that he's been in were independent Baptist churches, and that up until he came to Waynedale, that was his number one beef. That all these independent Baptist churches are alike. And the last church he went on the attack with was at least he cited it. I never talked to that pastor. Was that the pastor wouldn't let Catherine wear pants up on the platform to play the piano?
Yeah, that's the first thing they told me that when they landed at Waynedale. Okay,
well, I told my response to that weekend that I came up there. Benjamin brought that up, and I said, Benjamin, that has nothing to do with what denomination a church is. That has to do with the rules of a church. My church has rules, and every it may be totally foreign to you, but in the independent Baptist world, women wearing pants is pretty frowned upon, because of this quote unquote immodesty or whatever. Well, taking that, my church, I go to a Southern Baptist church, but for my church, our church rule is that everybody that is on the platform, the women have to be in a dress and the men have to be in a suit. I play the guitar at my church. I wear a suit. Of course, I wear a gun at church, so I wear a suit all the time anyway. But but the rule for our church is, and everybody knows it, you're going to get up and sing a special. If you're a lady, you're going to wear a dress. If you're a man, you're going to have a suit and tie on. That's just the rule of our church. And that doesn't mean that we're legalistic. It doesn't mean that we're off in la-la land. That's just the rule of our church. And everybody abides by it. Well, Benjamin does not like rules. No. And he's never liked rules. So if Benjamin wants to do whatever Benjamin wants to do, and anybody that dares to disagree with him, he attacks them. So just understand, Pastor, that you inherited this. You didn't create this monster, and you are not responsible. And I thank you for what you tried to do on behalf of my family and our siblings. I thank you for what you tried to do over the last 2 years. We prayed for you and your church, and I was hoping that you could reach him. But don't feel like a failure that you did not.
Yeah, man, I really thought we were really getting to him, outwardly he showed remarkable signs of progress, and now I know it was all phony. He was doing that to get weaseled farther in.
Yes, he's completely 100% fake. He lives the life of a lie, and it's sad. He lives in such bondage, and he himself is such a perverted individual that his mind just must be in complete turmoil. He lives in I put it this way, none of us will let our wives be around him. Our children, I don't have any children, but my other siblings, they will not let him be around their children. He himself is a perverted individual. So what he describes on Facebook, what he attacks on Facebook, he's attacking himself. And he's a complete phony. But he always has been. And remarkably, every church that he's been in, including our home church, my home church that we grew up in, he was the song leader. So somehow or another, he always manages to end up being on the platform, leading the singing, making a spectacle of himself. And a couple of my siblings mentioned that over the last year and a half. They're like, why would Pastor Johnson allow Benjamin to be up on the platform leading singing the way Benjamin acts? I said, well, number one, Pastor Johnson may not know how Benjamin really acts. But I said, then number two, y'all need to look at yourselves, because just 2 years ago, he was a song leader at your church. So, and that kind of quieted them down. So, and I said that to my siblings because my brother's the pastor there, and that kind of made them do the yeah, I guess you're right.
You know, and as soon as we started seeing these qualities in him, we took him off the platform, and the more out of control he became, the tighter the restrictions against him, and the tighter the restrictions against him, the more rebellious he was. The
Yes.
more brazen he's been on social media. He has fallen out of regular attendance and fellowship, and he'll send his wife and kids, but rarely attends himself. And I am in a group text, an ongoing group text with he and his ex-wife. She asked for that accountability, and originally it was her pastor and myself as well were both to be included in these communications between them, and she just asked for that for her own protection. But as time has gone along, Ben has progressively become more adversarial, and even when I use the word violent, I don't mean that he's acted out violently physically, but his words have become increasingly more violent. He is a sick man.
Yes, he's sick mentally, he's sick spiritually, and he is sick sexually. He's a sick individual. And that's why I said everything about him is turmoil. I didn't know that you were in that group text with him until Jean. Jean doesn't have a lot of communication with us, but she does reach out to us when she gets exasperated, and I'm glad that she does. And she reached out to me about 3 weeks ago, and that's when she told me that she was in that group text with you, and I said, that's good. I'm glad you're doing that. And that's we're also setting up this trip for me to come up there, and for what weekend she's supposed to have the kids. So, it's heartbreaking, and now the kids have been yanked out of yet another church, and they're going to be confused. And and then Benjamin's going to start berating your church, berating your wife and you, and and the kids are going to sit and listen to that. And they're like, what was wrong with our church? That's his pattern. You're church number 5.
And the one thing that may be some sort of a saving grace in that is that Ian is very, very, very connected to a young woman in our church who comes from a very solid, spiritually solid family, and so
Ashlyn.
Yeah, Ashlyn. Ben may win over the young ones, but he's going to have a hard time with Ian.
I would say you're probably right, because to yank him out of that, that's going to be a challenge for him.
Yeah, and he would probably leave home, I would imagine.
Eventually, Benjamin's going to have his kids are going to start realizing what their dad is, and I don't know how long that's going to take. And it's sad it's that way, but I will tell you, Jean is a solid mom. She endured a lot with Benjamin. He was very abusive to her, both physically, mentally, everything. He was a horrible husband to her, and treated her like garbage. Through their married years, she literally looked like somebody out of a trailer park who was daily beaten. That's how she looked their entire marriage. And it wasn't until she left him that she started to become alive. And I don't know how long this is going to last with Catherine, but and we don't really trust Catherine either.
I don't either.
A lot of what Catherine says about her ex-husband and stuff doesn't make sense.
Well, for what it's worth, I've got a 2:00 phone conference with him. So he reached out to me 2 weeks ago. So this just proves something to you, Joel. The way the pieces have started falling into place. He reached out to me 2 weeks ago out of the clear blue sky. Like, I didn't even know the guy's name. I knew of him, but didn't know his name. And he reached out to me through Facebook Messenger and said, "Hey, man, there's some things that you really need to know. You know, man, as a good pastor does, I continue to give Ben the benefit of the doubt, and I felt like I owed Ben some commitment, some trustworthiness, and so I never returned this guy's message. But this morning, I messaged him back and said, I would like to hear more about your story. So he supposedly has a lengthy diatribe of perversion and fraud and hate.
Are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you broke up for just a second. Yes, I'm not surprised by that. And their accusation of him, and I don't even know his name either, but their accusation of him is that he is a sexual deviant and a transsexual and all kinds of stuff that they've come up with.
Right.
And my thought process with that is why in their custody things would a court in Michigan, Michigan is very liberal anyway, why would any court in Michigan award custody of 4 children to a man who's a deviant?
Right. It just doesn't add up. Most
of the time, courts tend to side with mothers. Right. Most of the time.
To a fault.
Not do that, something's up.
Yeah. And you know, I've always thought that, but I just never. I've always thought that and wondered about that. My wife and I have talked about it a million times, but Catherine was so convincing, brother. She was all the things that you would expect a conservative, thoughtful, Jesus-loving mom to be. And so, the whole thing has just, there's been disparity after disparity after disparity. And, now I'm to the point where while we've tried to help Catherine because she's come to us with stories of abuse and neglect from Ben. So, my wife has a rapport with her and we've tried to help. And so, we've wanted to trust her, but the longer she sides with Ben and the longer she weighs in on his ridiculous Facebook posts and calls into questions the things that he calls into question, the more I say, I can't. You're not much different than him.
Yes, that's been our conclusion. I don't know Catherine. I've only met her 2 times, so I don't really know her. But several of my siblings know her very well. And I was not aware that our families knew one another. You say, I left home in 1992. But the rest of them that were still there, she and her family would come there. Her dad was an evangelist, and they would come there, and so they knew her. And the way they describe Catherine is that she and Benjamin deserve each other.
Wow.
And that's to quote my siblings. So, I can't say that myself because I genuinely do not know her. I've only met her twice. Right. But from those who do know her in my family, their statement is the 2 of them deserve each other.
Isn't that something?
So that's all I can tell you from that point of view. But I want to give you, I'm actually pulling up my troops headquarters. I have a meeting, so I'm going to have to jump off. But I want to give you my cell phone number so that you have it. And and any way I can help you, because probably pretty soon Benjamin will probably block you from Facebook where you can't see anything he does. And but then he's not done, preacher. I wish I could tell you he is, but over the next months, he's coming after your church because that's just what he does. So I'm sad to say that because your church does not deserve that. And I've enjoyed. I watch some of your church services online when I'm at work. Just to switch it up a little bit. I watch mine, but sometimes I've enjoyed watching yours. And your church has been a blessing to me. And I enjoyed the Sunday I was there. But and your church has been a blessing to Benjamin, but Benjamin
Yeah.
will not reciprocate that. He will attack you.
Wow.
So anyway, my cell phone number is 704
Okay.
692
692.
4799. 692 4799.
I got it. I'm going to, when we get done, I'm going to send you a text message that has my my email address in it. If you see content online, assuming that you're right that I do get blocked, if you see things online that are useful to me, if you could screenshot them and forward them to me, I'd appreciate it.
I absolutely will, because I want you to know from our family, this I will say for my siblings, that for our family, we are going to defend your church and you, and because I know what he's done and I know what he's going to do, and I'm not interested in any issues in your church. That is your church's issue to deal with, if there is one. I doubt there is, but that is of no concern to us. What we're concerned with is what he's going to try to do in your community, and so I will absolutely do that.
I sure would appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much for calling me.
So, I hope it's an encouragement to you. My pastor said
it was.
You call him and you encourage him.
Yeah, it is. Knowing that I'm not alone in it, and knowing that, given your vantage point, it brings a lot of clarity to the situation. I feel like I'm much better informed now. Hopefully,
you're better prepared.
I hope so. You can continue to pray for me.
I certainly will, and I want to thank you on behalf of our family. I want to thank you and your church for everything that you've done for that family, and everything you tried to do for Benjamin and Catherine. Although I did not support them getting married, it wasn't because of the divorce issue. That's irrelevant to me. I did not support them getting married. I told them that because I knew what Benjamin was, and from my perspective, no girl deserved that.
Right.
And I told Benjamin that. I said, Benjamin, you are in no position to marry anyone. And during that time he was a reveling drunk and everything else. And I said, you just need to take care of your children and get your act together. You don't need to be going and marrying anybody. And so he thinks, but after they got married, I tried to be supportive of them. Now, I didn't support what they did, but I tried to be supportive. And that's probably where he's coming from, where he was saying that I'm the only sibling that blah, blah, blah. But I also know that just a week ago he was attacking me on a podcast. He didn't say my name yet. He will. But I know exactly who he was talking about. And a couple of the conversations, quote unquote conversations that he brought up in that podcast were conversations I had with him that weekend. And that's what he does. He'll just start throwing out conversations, and start betraying people. Anyway, well, I appreciate your time, Pastor Johnson, and
thank you,
I hope
God bless you. It was.
You as well.
Sure. It was for sure. All right.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
All right, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.